Why have I quit my job? Why have I, bought a van? And why am I going to drive around the country? Well, I'm passionate about the idea that you need to be heard. And I want to stitch these stories together across the states. We're going to find the commonalities. And it's going to be really an amazing experience. And I look forward to you joining me on the jar.
Morning, everybody. Welcome back to Mental Health Today. I'm your host, Ken Stearns, and I kind of give that background to that little video there. That was me 30 months ago on the audio, and a little video of the team putting the van together, getting the stickers on there, and driving around the country, 96 cities, 330 interviews roughly. And one of the guests along the way was Jon Clark, our guest here today on Mental Health. Second time around on Mental Health. One time around, you might be the third. You might be the first third timer. I think I might have one other person. I think I might have somebody else in the running. But heck, you're a good candidate for the fourth interview. Jon's got a great story on, just kind of talk about someone who rode it all the way down to the gutter in pain, and sometimes how people find their way out is a fantastic story. And that story is all on the jar, and it's Jon, your story is really bananas. It's so cool. And your parents are really cool. You got such a great story and such a great team and people around you.
I'm very
so
fortunate.
Maybe just, you are very fortunate. And so it's so cool to follow your journey now. A year or something later, you've got a book coming out, you got a retreat happening. And we'll talk about that, talk about your book, talk a little bit about your healing journey for people just catching you for the first time. And
right.
How does somebody end up writing a book on posture, stretching, body mechanics, and psilocybin? and you were a pretty straight guy, like from a pretty straight family. So the fact that you're running around preaching mushrooms is a wild story. Let's hear. Why don't you give us a little background on how did you get here?
Yeah. So my path was a bit unconventional and definitely I didn't expect to become a psychedelic posture therapist. That's not what when I graduated from high school, I didn't say when I grow up, I'm going to be a psychedelic posture
Not
therapist.
on your bingo card, right?
No, I didn't know that was an option.
Yeah. I missed that one.
I broke my back when I was 17 though. When I was a junior in high school, I broke my L5 vertebra in half in a skiing accident. And for the next almost 2 decades, getting close to 2 decades, I was suffering from severe chronic pain, ever worsening chronic pain that was intractable, treatment resistant, and eventually ended up in a wheelchair for several years. Now, I got out of the wheelchair with the help of posture therapy, and that solved a lot of my problems, but not all of them. One day, when I was desperate, I ate some mushrooms and did 6 hours of posture therapy, and it changed my life. And
that's so interesting. That's really magical.
Yeah, it was for me. In fact, it kind of blew my whole worldview apart, because I was very much a agnostic atheist type mindset, and then I had what I had to eventually reconcile was nothing short of a miracle in my personal life. So it was there were challenging aspects to the healing, but it was all good in the end for me. And you can hear my whole story in lots of places. I've told my story on the jar. I've told my story on Mental Health Today before. I've got my own podcast where I've told my story, and of course you can hear my story in my book.
Yeah, awesome.
And I think that's what we want to spend most of our time today talking about. Is the work
title
now.
of the book for people listening on audio. How are they going to be able to find it? Because this will be out on audio.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, yeah. So if you're listening on audio, I don't know why I'm showing the book again if you're listening on audio, but I'm showing the book to the camera for the people on audio.
Absolutely.
And it's called Psychedelics, Chronic Pain, and the Posturedelic Hypothesis. This is actually an old cover. There'll be a new one on the Row book. Okay. It comes out June 4th. It'll be available on Amazon, on ebook, on print. And Hopefully audiobook eventually, but that'll be dependent on.
You have a good voice.
Got to get some sales first so I can afford the studio time, right?
Absolutely. Hey, you just do it in your own home studio. You'll be all right. What's the premise of the book? What if I buy the book, what am I hoping to get out of it?
Right. Yeah. So this book is, you could think of it as, there's a lot of different things that you'll get out of this, because I am covering, this is a new type of psychedelic assisted posture therapy, a brand new type. This is incorporating intelligently designed movement into the psychedelic experience. This isn't putting on blindfolds and putting on headphones and waiting for the healing to come. This is a more proactive approach to targeting the types of problems that are present with chronic pain. This type of approach is highly focused on chronic pain, but also incorporates many aspects of the mental health problems that accompany chronic pain. And we are from a biopsychosocial model when we bring all this together with my retreat structures and online integration communities afterwards. The biopsychosocial model of chronic pain is, we want to treat the biological aspects. We need to treat the emotional and psychological aspects. Want to provide a social community and better social understanding of chronic pain to assist people in being more responsible with their and personally empowered with their recovery.
I like that, being personally in charge, right?
Yeah, so I definitely try to go after the biopsychosocial model with this form of treatment. And what we are really doing, here's where there's a big hurdle that needs to be overcome when we talk about psychedelics and chronic pain, is that we are not using these as painkillers in most cases. And certainly within my technique, I don't even have a microdosing protocol within my technique. I am not advocating for the daily use of medicine. I am proposing a method to help people get off of daily medications. Right. That's
interesting point, right? Because a lot of people are the microdosing. There's a lot. I had a microdosing diet guest on talking about a diet, including it in. And so
I'm not.
To be a different objective.
I'm not.
She had.
I'm not disparaging microdosing or anything along those lines, but so many people in chronic pain are at a point where they're so tired of taking pills, they just want to not have to take them,
and get clean first, right? Get healthy, get clean, and then I think if you want to layer something else on, a different treatment, that's a different story for something else,
right? Like I said, I'm not disparaging microdosing. I'm just want to encourage our society to find treatments for chronic pain that do not rely on daily medications, because it is possible in so many cases. It is absolutely possible to go after the real root causes of the chronic pain, and the types of chronic pain that our medical system is, quite frankly, terrible at treating. And this isn't a secret among doctors. Our medical system is full of competent people, well-intentioned, competent people. But the problem of chronic pain we wouldn't have an opioid crisis if our system was good at treating chronic pain. Like, it wouldn't be this bad. It's
it's a tough question, right? What's worse? The reliance on it and I mean, for you, you were it was untreatable, right? Is what kind of, or treatment resistant.
Treatment resistant. I go to physical therapy. I got worse. I got injured. I was getting more pain doing all the things that I was told to do by the doctors. The injections caused more inflammation.
Shockingly, sticking a needle into your body causes a reaction. That's what
I wasn't. I mean, I had doctors wanting to install a morphine pump in my body. I I didn't want that. I didn't want that life.
You didn't want to be an addict, like
I
a legal addict.
I did not want a morphine pump in my body. But that was the kind of that's the kind of options that I was left to with the Western medical system.
That's just tough.
And
I mean, to think there's
it wasn't
like
acceptable.
millions of people like you in that
Mhm.
situation. I mean, and I
And
guess that's who you're trying to touch.
And in 2018, there's a study I referenced in my book that it's estimated that, and the study was published in 2018, looking at suicides over the past several years, I believe, and they estimated that 1 out of every 10 suicides had chronic pain as a contributing factor.
Yeah.
Like, this is a life or death situation. At the time I took psilocybin, I took it because I was ready to kill myself if I couldn't get out of pain. Like,
I remember this part of the conversation when we had the interview with the jar in your house, you know, still, and just like how desperate that is that people get to that space because of the pain.
Yeah. And so to take someone from that type of situation to where, and here's the real issue of why this treatment, this chronic pain becomes so treatment resistant. The brain rewires itself to make pain a constant part of the existence. Okay. It's called nociplastic pain. If you're familiar with the term neuroplasticity, neuroplasticity refers to our brain's ability to rewire itself based on, that's how we learn. We learn because the brain creates new neural connections all the time. And your brain can learn. If you're in pain for too long a period of time, your brain learns to produce those pain signals. Even if the physical cause of that pain has healed, the brain can still cause you to feel it all the time. And you don't know the difference. Your brain, your consciousness is incapable of knowing whether or not you just stubbed your toe or if your brain is just producing the signals that just make you feel like you stubbed your toe, because they are the same networks in the brain that are being activated, and they can become hyperactivated. And the neural networks that are processing this pain, they become the default mode of how that part of the brain works. Now, what psychedelics do is they allow us to rewire the brain in a different way. They increase neuroplasticity. So psychedelics, like when I take a dose of psilocybin, during the course of my experience, I am building new neural connections at an increased rate. Okay, it bumps up, but it's not just during the experience. For several weeks afterwards, this has been well documented with number of studies. For a number of weeks afterwards, we call it the neuroplastic window. Your brain is making new neurons and making new connections between existing neurons at an increased rate, and now that becomes a question of, okay, how during the psychedelic experience can we target these networks that are responsible for pain? When we look at more traditional aspects of psychedelic facilitation, the type done in all the research studies for the past 20 years, they're putting on blindfolds, they're putting on headphones, and people come out of these experiences with spontaneous relief from chronic pain. But in those trials, it looks like it's completely random because they don't know how to target it. So now, let me back up and stop talking about psychedelics for a minute. Let me talk about the posture therapy. So posture therapy is a form of corrective exercise that allows us to, if I have one shoulder higher than the other, posture therapy is a form of corrective exercises that allows us to get those shoulders even again. Now, in posture therapy, we are concerned with deviations, posture deviations like this, but we're also concerned with dysfunctions and compensations. I'll explain that real quickly. It's very simple. So if I see someone with a shoulder that looks like this, when I go ask them to give me simple shoulder flexion, they may be unable to do this. When they try to do this, instead, their body does this because this can't do it. And doing this gives them a few extra inches to reach a shelf that's out of their reach or something, right? It's a compensation. The inability to go into shoulder flexion is the dysfunction. The compensation is the lateral flexion of the spine, the elevation of the shoulder girdle. And so they're walking around like this, right? It all ties together. Now, there are many reasons that people can develop postural dysfunctions: sedentary lifestyle, emotional problems, all these things tie together. I talk about all that in the book. But what people think is because we fix posture by doing corrective exercises, that it's a problem of the musculoskeletal system. And lots of posture therapists are even in this mindset. And I disagree with them about this. Posture therapists are always saying muscles move bones. So if a bone is out of place, it's because a muscle moved it out of place. I say, yes, of course, muscles physically move bones, but the brain is what's moving the muscles. And
firing and wiring, right? It's firing the muscles, right?
If someone is unable to do this and their brain makes them do this when the signal they're sending is to do this, there's a disconnection between the two. The brain has learned how to send those signals. So what posture therapy does is the part of the brain that is responsible for telling your body how to move is called the homunculus. We also refer to it as body schema maps or body schema models. And these models, I define posture as a cumulative manifestation of the cumulative physical manifestation of the body schema models contained in the brain. So how we look is a manifestation of how our brain tells our body to look. Whoa, right? And that means that posture therapy is chipping away at these models. Like think of the ancient Egyptians chipping away on the granite, right? It takes for effing ever to chip away and make that granite look how you want to look, right? Psychedelics, because of this ability to increase neuroplasticity, they can go and make these models like wet clay. Now we're just sculpting it. Now these posture therapy exercises, that's what I noticed the first time I did posture therapy with psychedelics, is that these exercises I had done thousands of times before. I had been studying to become a posture therapist for 2 years by that point. I had done these exercises thousands of times, but every time I did each exercise, it was like I was doing it for the first time. Now, part of that is I was approaching it with the child's mind, the kind of child's perspective of wonder that psychedelics provide. The other part of that is that they were affecting my brain in a completely different way. Because I had a heightened mind-body connection. And at the same time, those neural circuits that were responsible for dictating how my compensation patterns were causing my body to move were rapidly changing. I call it a rapid alteration to body schema models in the brain. And this can be achieved through my favorite kind of mechanism for this in the psychedelic space. I call it a synesthetic biofeedback interface. Okay. A synesthetic. I'll explain exactly what that means. It's a synesthetic biofeedback interface. Synesthesia is when we are processing one sense through the cortex of the brain that normally processes another sense. So it's common in the psychedelic experience for someone to report that their visuals are responding to the music they're hearing, right? Their visuals, like the crazy cool things they're seeing out here, are in sync with the beat of the music. So their visual cortex is processing data coming in through the ears. Okay. That's called synesthesia.
Okay.
And this can happen in a variety of ways. In the most basic sense, it's when one part of the brain processes signals that another part of the brain normally would. And this can allow for some incredible types of healing. In the context of posturedelic therapy, that's what I call this, psychedelic assisted posture therapy. I call it posturedelic therapy. In the context of posturedelic therapy, these interfaces allow us to do what is, in my opinion, the most advanced form of muscle testing in the universe, because it's using our brain and our eyes to create visual apparatuses for us to conduct muscle testing. I'll give you an example of what that means.
Yeah, give us an example.
So, in that first very powerful experience that you and I have talked about before, Ken, what happened for me was when I got to the really powerful part of the psilocybin experience, and I was combining these exercises, an apparition, a vision, whatever, an entity, whatever you want to call it, a musculoskeletal system appeared in my vision. And it was mimicking every exercise that I did.
So wild.
Okay. I was, instead of just having to rely on how my body feels when I'm doing this exercise, I saw a musculoskeletal system without any skin. I'm not saying it was like completely anatomically correct or anything along those lines, but I saw, in fact, it was very psychedelic in nature, but I was able to see how my body was moving and see it from any angle I wanted. It was completely interactive. And once I realized that I could interact with it by thinking. Then I realized, well, what happens if I like talk to it? And I ask it, okay, you're doing every exercise I do. What do I need to do to get better? It starts doing exercises. I start following it. Okay.
Wow. Now that's wild, because normally you would think that everything's kind of created in your own mind.
And
that sounds a little bit bananas to me, because it's one thing to follow, you know what I mean? It's one thing for you to ask and then you interpret something from it, right? And you're making your own interpretation. It's completely different when you ask it, well, what should I do?
Yeah.
And then it takes off and, well, thank you for asking. I've been waiting for you to ask.
Yeah, I've encountered a number of I prefer to speak of them as entities in the psychedelic space.
Yeah. So it's a different.
They in my experience, they seem very willing to help. You just have to ask.
Wild, right?
So that experience for me reframed one. It solved a lot of my solved the root causes of a number of my pain issues. In the sense that I now had a practical way to start moving forward. Before that experience, I'd been studying posture therapy for a long time. Like all these exercises, hundreds of these exercises, hundreds of posture exercises. They were like puzzle pieces on a table that I couldn't put together. After that experience, it was like, oh yeah, these two go together like this. These two go together like this. And I was never stuck. 6 months later, I competed in a disc golf tournament. It was like a 9-mile hike through the mountains outside of Albuquerque. I started making rapid progress after this. Okay. Now here's the flip side of all this. After I had this very powerful experience, I told my girlfriend about it. I'm like, babe, this stuff is incredible, you know? and she decides she wants to try it, and she has a little bite of chocolate and she's feeling great. And then an hour later, she decides to eat a little more, right? And she ends up having a very what she characterizes as one of the worst experiences of her life, because I didn't understand how to respect the medicine. Okay. I that was the medicine showing us how powerful it really is. That, it's not like alcohol where you take one drink, maybe you're feeling great. You take another drink, feeling great. And you can keep on doing that for a while before you stop feeling great. Right.
Yeah.
You have the right amount, and then you can have way too much very quickly. Right.
And it doesn't go away
for some people. It's there is so that's it took me a long time to that experience humbled me, and I didn't take mushrooms for like over a year and a half after that. I just
Wow.
started learning about him. I was like, okay, like this is something that I don't understand. I'm not gonna F
Interesting.
with this.
Yeah, yeah.
I
Make you a
was,
little scared.
yeah, it humbled me. It very much humbled me. And but I eventually, what spurred me to fully develop this type of therapy into a comprehensive protocol that we can use to target a variety of forms of chronic pain is when I got my posture therapy certification, and
Okay.
I've been working with clients, and eventually I got a client who was in a very bad situation. And uh, when she came to me, she had just started her Family Medical Leave Act from
Wow.
work. So she had just gone on short-term disability because of the problem she was having. And we were working together, and she was making progress. And I tell the whole story in the book. It's a rather long story, but the skinny of it is that when she eventually lost her short-term disability, and then was denied long-term disability, and
Oh,
then was losing her house, she decided to take her own life.
jeez.
And now what we were doing together, it was helping her more than anything else she had done before, the regular posture therapy. But it wasn't enough. It wasn't fast enough. And even though it was helping her, pain was still wreaking havoc on her life in the meantime. Even though she was getting better, she still lost her job. Even though she was putting
Hmm.
2 to 4, 6 hours a day into her recovery, and then being exhausted and having to go to doctor appointments, her recovery was a full-time job, and she wasn't able to hold it together.
Dang.
Um, so after that is when I became really obsessed with figuring out like what had happened to me.
Go
And
back to your own story and like it's like how do I help somebody? I mean, nothing will
I
do it
couldn't just go and tell her, hey, go eat mushrooms. And especially at that point, I still
with
hadn't
your
eaten mushrooms again since
with your
then.
your girlfriend's
Like
experience.
I couldn't go and tell someone to go eat mushrooms when I knew that something like that could happen.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
didn't, but I also at the same time I knew that what this could help other people besides just me. And so that's when I really became obsessed with figuring out. That's why I call it the Posturedelic Hypothesis. The word Posturedelic means alignment manifesting.
Hmm.
And I call it the hypothesis because I had to figure out what I thought happened to me. And then I had to figure out, okay, if I have an idea of what mechanism of action might be, this whole posture therapy, like I didn't even know
Yes.
that posture therapy affected the brain at that point. I had to figure all that out. uh, I came to understand that as a result of needing to figure out why the mushrooms, like why does doing a few exercises while you're on mushrooms,
Yeah.
how can that
Yeah.
change
Well,
your life? Like it sounds ridiculous to me. It sounds absolutely ridiculous to me.
yeah.
you know?
It does. I mean, like on the
And
face value, it sounds like, oh, sure, sure. Of course it did. Of course that worked.
so that was the experience that took this from just like a very powerful personal healing to
Yeah.
how can I systematize this? How can I make this repeatable? And how can I put it out there for the
Can
world?
you make it repeatable? So you
Mhm.
found something, and so you got to tell us about the retreat. So I mean, because
Oh
this,
yeah.
I mean, you're going from that moment, right, losing a client, a friend, right? I mean, somebody you're, kind of
Yeah, by
probably
that
had
point
a
she was a friend. I
right,
By that point
yeah,
she was a friend. I spent she bought 16 hours of therapy from me. I easily spent 35 to 40 by the time
yeah, and
the
and
end
in a
came
way,
around.
it's was your life story, right? Also in the same situation where the pain was enough to take, to consider taking your own life. If I can't fix this, I can't live like this. So here you
Mhm.
met your mirror image in a way.
Yeah. She was. Yeah.
You're
It affected me in a deep. Yeah. It was very difficult.
Yeah, that's tough. And so now you're back in the other way. You're full blown. You got a retreat happening. You're going to be, tell us about that.
So, on June 4th, I'll start the official marketing campaign, but I'll give you
Okay.
a little sneak preview of what's going
Yeah.
on with these chronic pain mushroom retreats in just outside of Puerto Vallarta, Mexico. This is going to be the place where people can go and try Posturedelic Therapy in a
Okay.
fully professional setting. We will
Mm,
have medical staff to perform evaluations to ensure that everyone's safety is the top priority.
okay.
We have a medicine carrier and shaman on site who is responsible for administering the medicine, and several nurses on hand during the experience.
Okay.
This is like a 7-day retreat over the course of at a private beach resort. There will be, over the course of those 7 days, there's 2 mushroom ceremonies that are both following my Posturedelic Therapy protocol.
Okay.
And in between those ceremonies, and there's one-on-one time in terms of planning out exactly how each individual ceremony needs to be structured
Mm,
and what exercises they need to be focused on. And of course, in the weeks leading up to the retreat, they're also doing exercises and getting familiar with
okay.
the technique. There's, in the book, I talk about how important it is to I'm not promising, oh, come eat some mushrooms and have a miracle cure. You got to
Right.
be doing these exercises. You got to build these. You got to build the scaffolding of these body schema
Yes.
models in
Yeah.
the background. And then
I
what the
love that.
mushrooms really do is, after we've built the scaffolding, the mushrooms perform a switcheroo, right? They take that scaffolding, and the hope is we make that the primary model. And those old painful
Okay.
models are now just a memory, a little, literal, our memories are just models of the past.
Right. Right.
Now, instead of that pain being a model of the present, we want that pain to be a model of the past. And um, with these retreats, there is also mental health on site. We will have hypnotherapy and psychotherapy available for integration, because during these psychedelic
Okay.
experiences, deep emotional things can come to light.
Yeah. Right.
Now, with my technique, we are using relatively low doses. People
Okay.
can't effectively exercise if they're in another dimension, right? So we
Probably.
that's the other thing that that is maybe a bit unconventional or breaks the mold of what people would think about psychedelic pain relief, is that I'm specifically avoiding zonking people out. If they
Okay.
zonk out, it's very difficult for me to work with them, right?
Okay.
Uh,
Makes sense.
so yeah, and we are, it's a highly structured, highly professional retreat. I'll have other facilitators there on hand to assist me throughout the entire
Mm,
process.
okay.
And this is going to be a way to safely bring this type of therapy to the world, with, in a controlled environment, in a legal environment, which just unfortunately is not available in the United States at this time, at least not easily available.
Right.
There are technically ways to do it in Colorado, but it comes out to be almost as expensive. And here, I'll tell you what, you're not on an all-inclusive private beach resort. So, um, uh, so I want to just hit on that these retreats aren't strictly the. I detail the entire protocol in my book.
Okay.
Now, I'm very clear that I do not endorse people just going and doing this protocol willy nilly. It is
Mm,
certainly, just like any treatment protocol, it comes with risks. And I discuss all
okay.
those risks in the book. My book serves as a thorough harm reduction guide, discussing everything from how to source safe psychedelics, um, how to make sure that you are going about learning the exercises and performing them in such a way that you will not hurt yourself, how to ensure that you are training a trip sitter, someone to like watch over you, and like, you know, even when I facilitate, I have like essentially a trip sitter who assists me, right? I don't want it to be just me administering this medicine. This is a powerful experience that works best when you have a team of support for in this specific case. It is a really difficult thing for me to put out. It's like, do as I say, not as I do, because I did this all completely unsupervised when I first started, right?
Well, I mean, but you learned in that you should have supervision, or you know.
Yeah, I learned that I should have supervision,
right.
And I also learned that the next time when I just gave this medicine to my girlfriend, that bad things. Now she's been able to reframe. She's had positive experiences with this medicine right now. She's come back around. Okay. But it took several years for the trauma of that first experience to be manageable, to where she felt comfortable going back into that space.
Go back in.
This is that story right there is why I encourage people to exercise caution, because this medicine is a beautiful gift from whatever divine aspects of this universe are at play, in my opinion. However, if we do not treat it with the respect that it deserves, it can certainly make its power known.
Amen to that. Amen to that. Jon, how do people find you? Again, one more time, because I think we got a good cover, right? We got the book coming out June 2nd-ish.
Yeah.
And then you got
June 4th. Yeah, June 4th. Yeah, we got so let me get this all in my head before I just yeah, so on June 4th, the book is being released on Amazon. That'll be on print and ebook. I am hoping to have a wider release to like bookstores and stuff several months down the road, but I'm focusing on Amazon to begin with, to not dilute my sales channels and rank higher, to be honest. But the after that, I don't know exactly when the retreat is going to be yet. We are still figuring. I'm still putting all those puzzle pieces together. I will have that figured out by June 4th. And in the way that you're going to want to follow me is by just searching Posture Monster Jon on social media, or if you search Chronic Pain Mushroom Retreats Mexico, you'll find the Instagram account I created for these retreats down in Mexico, where information like that will also be posted. My website is chronicpainrewired.com, and that's also the name of my podcast, Chronic Pain Rewired, and that's obviously a nod to this ability of psychedelics to rewire that the pain signals in the brain. And let's see, I think I also just yesterday had an article published in Psychedelic Medical News, psychedelicmedicalnews.com, and this article is comparing psychedelics and opioids as painkillers, and really investigating how it's unfortunate that psychedelics are being still viewed with a lot of fear by much of the population, especially when we look at treating chronic pain, because our society has so much collective trauma from the opioid crisis. And where a lot of people I've encountered this a number of times when I'm trying to tell people about my work, they're afraid that this is going to become the opioid crisis part 2. And I wrote that article to really dive into how that's not the case, how we're not getting people hooked on these things. And psychedelics are actually indicated to treat addiction. They're indicated to treat opioid addiction based on the research that we know so far. They may actually be the biggest, most effective tool we have for healing this tragedy that has been thrust upon our nation with the opioid crisis. And it's unfortunate that we are ignoring that. You can see my article on psychedelicmedicalnews.com for more on that.
Awesome.
That's all I got, I think, Ken.
That's good, man. Jon, awesome having you on the show again. I'm excited. I'm going to get your book. Super excited because I love that idea of being able to map in your own mind, what your body looks like and moving the muscles and making that mind-body connection, which is so important for people to understand how to do. I love it.
Yeah.
What a journey. The journey continues, my friend.
It does.
Yeah. And I hope
keeps turning.
Yeah. And I hope I'm around so I can make it to the retreat. That sounds like a lot of fun.
Oh, I would love to see you at one of these retreats. That'd be great.
That would be awesome. Thanks everybody for listening, supporting Mental Health Today podcast that just won't die. I've tried to let this thing go, and I keep getting messages from guests, from old guests, and even a bunch of new people are finding the show. So it's really exciting that this thing seems to have legs, and it's a great forum, great platform for people to tell their story and to hopefully gives others ideas on how to manage their mental health connected to your body health and so many other places that it shows itself, mental health. Jon, thanks again so much. Hang around for 30 seconds and I'll see you on the other side.
All righty.
Okay.
Yeah, loose, baby.
But we're about to go and make this vessel with these great professionals in public glass. We're not part of the community, but we're from the outer family of glass blowing. Yeah, we're gonna go make a magical giant jar with optic lenses so that if you turn it, it changes all the time. So if you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change.